Welcome into Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Sr. I hope all of your weeks are off to a fantastic start and you are recovering from that awful and ugly Philadelphia Eagles loss to the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium. Another Ben Simmons update to get to, as well as some trade targets that Bill Simmons and Kevin O'Connor discussed on a recent Bill Simmons podcast, which I thought was really interesting. We have a Ben Simmons sighting, or at least we had one over the weekend. He was seen with some behind-the-scenes film from somebody out there working out with the Sixers staff prior to Saturday's game against Minnesota. That game against the T-Wolves in double overtime with Joel Embiid going off was drunk, by the way. Now, Ben Simmons, even though he was working out with the Sixers staff prior to that game, did not hang around to hang out on the bench. No surprise there, because Ben Simmons is really flaky, and that's just who Ben Simmons is at this point. As for some of these trade targets who Bill Simmons and Kevin O'Connor discussed on the Bill Simmons podcast, this is a combination of some reporting from Kevin O'Connor, who's tapped into a lot of organizations across the league, and some opinions from both O'Connor as well as Ben Simmons. And you're looking at players right now who are at varying levels, who I think the Sixers would be able to trade for, and guys who kind of intrigued Simmons as well as O'Connor. Jerami Grant, after that report from Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer, reported to be a Ben Simmons trade target with this organization as they look to deal Simmons at some point this season. Hopefully, CJ McCollum has been a rumored Simmons trade target, as well as has Damian Lillard, which I think could be becoming more and more realistic because of the emergence and excellent play of Tyrese Maxey. We'll get to that here in just a bit. Pascal Siakam, another name who's been in the mix during these Ben Simmons rumors. De'Aaron Fox of the Sacramento Kings. If Sacramento elects to sell after firing Luke Walton, he could be on the move as well. So I kind of want to go player by player here. I said this a couple weeks ago after that report from Pompey about Jerami Grant, that I just don't think this is good enough value if you were to ship away Ben Simmons for a multitude of reasons. Jerami Grant has come a long way, folks, since the Sixers drafted him during the Sam Hinkie era several years ago. He was looked at as a raw and developmental prospect who was really a high-flying dunker at that point, started to develop a corner three. Last couple of years, he's really turned into a solid, the key word there, solid offensive player. Second last year in the running for most improved player behind Julius Randle, but he has become a more inconsistent shooter, and his numbers offensively this year just not that great, and not trending in the way that we thought it was trending last year. Ben Simmons, while his value is down, still a three-time All-Star, and in my opinion, the best defender in the league because he can defend all five positions. I would take right now, though, CJ McCollum, even though I wouldn't take Jerami Grant. I think CJ McCollum would factor in nicely to the Sixers rotation. I think you would be able to run a two-guard starting lineup with Tyrese Maxey at the starting point guard, who can create with that little bit of wiggle and explosiveness. I really like his finishing ability. His shooting numbers have really improved the last couple of weeks as well. Tyrese Maxey has taken his game to the next level, and I think CJ McCollum would be a nice complement to him as a two-guard. Now, a lot of people watching are probably like, well, CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard hasn't worked. Why would Tyrese Maxey and McCollum work? Well, Maxey is a different player. He could be the prototypical point guard, and at the end of games, that gives you a multitude of options that you can go with at the end of games, at the end of shot clocks, guys who can get a bucket. Maxey, McCollum, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. I like all four of those guys, as well as Seth Curry, coming off some of those screens, hitting some threes, as legitimate options late in the games to put the biscuit in the basket. Also, Bill Simmons, Kevin O'Connor discussed this, and this is something that I find intriguing and a storyline we're going to continue to follow. Of course, Tyrese Maxey, in my opinion, is Philadelphia's son. He's everything that we thought Markelle Fultz was going to be. I think that Maxey is close to being an untouchable trade asset. I'm not sure I would include him in a trade for Damian Lillard. Dame not having a good year this year, the least amount of points that he has averaged since his second or third year, but has the emergence, has the improved play, has the stock of Tyrese Maxey rising, made a Damian Lillard trade possible. Right now, the Portland Trailblazers out to a sluggish start. They have a 10-10 record, and if you could include Ben Simmons and Maxey in a deal for Damian Lillard, and you want to maximize the current window to win right now with Joel Embiid, JoJo and Dame would be a lethal 1-2 punch. That's really one of the only trades out there, maybe in addition to Bradley Beal, that I would make and include Maxey in a deal for to bring Damian Lillard to Philadelphia. If the Trailblazers continue to struggle, I think a Dame trade could be made possible, and I think you could entice Portland in including Ben Simmons and Maxey for Dame, and that would be the trade right there. As for Pascal Siakam, I like him as a player. Now, the Toronto Raptors are a developmental factory. They've done such a tremendous job of developing talent over time. Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, the list goes on and on and on. Masai Ujiri, Nick Nurse, really good at identifying talent, but also developing that talent as well. Gary Trent Jr., a recent addition to that equation. But a Pascal Siakam and Joel Embiid fit would worry me a little bit. Yes, Siakam is a forward, Embiid plays the 5, but they have somewhat similar styles. And the inconsistency from Siakam in terms of his three-point percentage and efficiency would kind of make that fit a little bit clunky for me. And I'm not sure it would work, even though I do really like his defensive upside. Now, he got maxed out a couple of off seasons ago, but he hasn't really lived up to that max contract. That's also, in addition to the fit being weird, a lot of money to take on. As for De'Aaron Fox, I like him as a player, but after watching the Sacramento Kings of late, because I'm kind of monitoring that team to see if they're going to be sellers as we get closer and closer to the NBA trade deadline in a couple of months, I was kind of watching his game closely, but also watching how he played against the Sixers as Philly was down 4 starters, and it was really Tyrese Maxey putting the team on his back late in that game, in addition to George Niang and some of the other pieces on this team that were able to defeat Sacramento. And I thought the Kings were really playing way too much hero basketball, and a part of that was De'Aaron Fox. Now, you looked at his stat line that night, he had a pretty solid outing, right? But it's really his inconsistency, and I don't think the fit with Fox and Maxey would work. In fact, I think it would be really, really weird because I think they have similar styles. And if I'm looking forward, I actually might want to put my money on Tyrese Maxey becoming the better player long-term than De'Aaron Fox. So do you think Ben Simmons will play for the Sixers this year? That is my question that I'm posing for all of you, because he was seen working out with the Sixers staff prior to that double overtime loss to Minnesota on Saturday night. Kevin O'Connor also reporting that he thinks there's a chance Simmons could rejoin Philly. I just don't think it can happen because of that contentious relationship. But let me know what you think down below. Type P for play, type W for he won't play. Make sure you get those votes in the comment section right now. Now, as we record 76ers now on Monday, it is Cyber Monday, so if you missed some of those Black Friday deals that we offered you last week, it's not too late to hop on board and join the party. How about this fresh 76ers hoodie with the Dope 76 logo? The material is really nice, and right now it is 50% off. It was $70, now on sale for $35, only if you use that link down below, thanks to today's presenting sponsor, Fanatics. Go to chatsports.com/76ers hoodie, and that deal will apply. Also, we want to know let Fanatics know, that Chat Sports sent you. So if you want this hoodie for yourself or a loved one during this holiday season or on Cyber Monday, you can cop it right now. Get 50% off in the process, only if you use that link down below. That link is available in the description as well as the comment section of this video. Want to move to Joel Embiid right now, and we'll hit this pretty quickly. It's kind of old news now, but we didn't get a chance to cover it here on the channel. I didn't realize that Embiid struggled with the coronavirus as much as he struggled with COVID, and he detailed his struggles with the virus after that game against the T-Wolves on Saturday, in which he was marvelous. Dropped 42 points in double overtime, returned from the COVID list to really just go crazy. As I mentioned earlier, that game was pretty drunk. I thought it was poorly officiated, but this is what we do know. Embiid was great. What we didn't know is that he was really struggling with COVID. He said this quote after the game, I really thought I wasn't going to make it. It was that bad. I'm thankful to be sitting here. He also said in typical Philly fashion, that John hit me hard. Yeah, I know all about that. I grew up in Dub C, Westchester, and went to Temple University, repping the 6'10 and the 4'8'4 as well as the 215 like Embiid is now. I've also made my coworkers start using Bull and John in the office. Yeah, that Philly influence is real. It's real on Embiid too, and man, he was real the other night. 42 points, 14 rebounds, 2 blocks, 12 of 23 from the field. over time, he has really owned Karl Anthony Towns, and he was able to own that matchup yet again. Now, D'Angelo Russell, the fraud that he is, went off as well, kind of dished and dissed Philly fans in the process. It was somewhat of a bad loss for Philadelphia, but with Joel Embiid in the lineup, this is a Sixers team that's 7-3, so it's really hard to kind of measure who the Sixers are right now as a team, but as long as Embiid starts to play and continues to play like this or near that MVP level that he was at last year, I think Philadelphia is going to improve upon that record and really climb up the standings in a loaded Eastern Conference. Joel Embiid is one of one. The guy's out for a couple of weeks. He comes off the COVID list. He said in his pregame workout he could barely make it up and down the floor. I'm not sure if he was being facetious, or if he was just messing around, not being totally honest and kind of joking around. But hey, I mean, given what he said about his dealings with COVID, can't even run up and down the floor. Then he goes out there against one of the best big men in the NBA, and Karl Anthony Towns, and drops a 42-piece. Absolutely crazy. We here in the city of brotherly love, lucky to have Embiid on this Sixers team. Let's hope that he can continue to stay healthy. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, because no matter what happens with this team, whether it's breaking news, or rumors, we have you covered on Philadelphia 76ers now. We were in touch with our folks and our friends at YouTube, and they said, you guys are killing it here on the channel. The fastest growing 76ers channel on YouTube. We want to continue to grow. We're also closing in on 3,000 subscribers. So if you like what you're seeing and you want more videos like this from a fellow Philly cat, hit that red subscribe button down below. As for the Sixers' upcoming schedule, pretty easy with some winnable games, but also some tough tests here as well, considering what the Sixers as a team have been dealing with of late. Should win the game tonight on Monday at home against the Orlando Magic. Orlando dealing with some injury issues. Then you go on the road against the Boston Celtics to kick off December. Really good litmus test to see where the Sixers are, as well as how the Sixers match up with Boston, a team with two of the top young wings in the NBA with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. A rematch of that second-round series against the Atlanta Hawks coming at you on the road on the 3rd of December. And then back-to-back games on the road against the Charlotte Hornets, an emerging team that really burst onto the scene last year as one of the surprise teams in the NBA. This year, further solidifying that. LaMelo Ball playing really good basketball. Miles Bridges has been fantastic. Gordon Hayward, pretty solid for that team as well. Haven't really seen much of the first-round pick James Bouknight out of UConn, but the point here being, Charlotte is a team that you cannot take lightly. And some of these teams outside, really all of them, outside of the Orlando Magic, teams who the Sixers could go up against in the Eastern Conference playoff race from here on out until the end of the regular season, maybe even take on in the playoffs depending where that seeding is. As I said, it's really hard to judge who exactly the Sixers are right now. I mean, they're basically a 500 team up to this point, and they've looked like that. But here's the deal. When you're without an MVP candidate in Embiid, who is a completely dominant presence, not just offensively, but defensively, where maybe his impact is even greater, and you're without him for such a long period of time, it's hard to kind of gauge what the Sixers team is right now. Now, it has allowed Tyrese Maxey to develop very, very quickly. But you also have to factor in Tobias Harris on the COVID list. Danny Green has been out. Seth Curry has missed a little bit of time. So I want to see what the full Sixers roster looks like and the semblance of it, and then I will be able to judge what the Sixers team is right now. Either way, even when they're at 100%, I think they need to trade Ben Simmons away to bring in another marquee player. That's when I think the Sixers could become a real squad in the East. Sixers need to start stacking wins. There's no question about that, because the East this year is extremely deep, and you don't really have a lot of breathing room to fall deep in the Eastern Conference standings. I mean, right now they're at the bottom tier of the Eastern Conference playoff teams. That's why you need to stack some wins. We've seen in the past how important home court advantage is for this organization as well as other teams across the NBA. And if you're floating around 6, 7, 8 seeds and you have to take on maybe a Miami Heat in the first round or a Brooklyn Nets, that's just a really tall task, and we know the playoff shortcomings for Philadelphia. I am excited to see more of this Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid two-man game. We've been robbed of seeing a lot of it throughout the season because Embiid was out, and in the early portion of the season, we just didn't know that Maxey was going to become this type of marquee player, Maxey. So looking ahead, excited to see more of that two-man game between them as they kind of operate the pick and roll as well as the pick and pop. I certainly think that can be lethal. Before I get out of here, one more question for you, because here at Chat Sports, we're all about our audience interaction. What is your level of concern with the 76ers right now? Scale it for me from 1 to 10. 1 being not concerned at all, 10 being very concerned. Get those votes in. And as always, thanks for making 76ers Now by Chat Sports a part of your day.